My name is Pearl. The courtroom was deathly silent, the only sound being the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I sat there, my binder clutched tightly in my hand like a shield, as the judge's words echoed through the room. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Conservatorship is not a tool for controlling a parent's autonomy. Allison and Derek sat across from me, their faces a mask of shock and fear. The realization that they had lost their grip on my life was written all over their expressions. It was a moment I had been waiting for, but it was also a moment filled with a deep sense of sadness. How had it come to this? I cast my mind back to a cold Saturday afternoon, not too long ago. I was in my brand new house, sunlight slanting across the hardwood floors. I was unpacking the last box of dishes when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel, thinking it was my neighbor dropping off the apple pie she'd promised. But when I opened the door, my smile froze. There stood my daughter Lily, in a designer dress she surely couldn't afford, and my son Max, reeking of last night's beer. Between them was a man in a black suit, holding a briefcase. "Mom," Lily said, her voice cold and business-like. "We need to talk. This is Mr. Thompson. He's here to make sure you're protected." Mr. Thompson stepped forward with a fake smile. "Mrs. Pearl, your children are concerned about your recent financial decisions. They'd like you to sign a co-ownership agreement for this property for your safety." I felt a heavy weight sink inside me. I hadn't even finished setting up my bedroom, and already they were trying to take over my home. I stared at them, the cold winter air biting my arms. "Is that really why you're here?" Little did they know, I had been preparing for this moment for years. My life hadn't turned out the way I'd dreamed. I grew up in a small town, the daughter of hard-working farmers. My parents were kind but strict, instilling in me a strong work ethic and a sense of responsibility. I got married young to Henry, a factory worker. We were happy, and soon, Lily and Max came into our lives. But then, tragedy struck. Henry was killed in a construction accident. One phone call was all it took to shatter our world. I was left alone with two young children. Lily was 14 and Max was 8 at the time. The bills started piling up. The mortgage company didn't care that I had just lost my husband, and neither did the utility companies. I took the first job I could find, working as a cleaner at a nursing home. The hours were long, and the pay was meager, but it was a way to keep a roof over our heads. I worked double shifts, scrubbing floors and changing bed sheets, all while trying to be there for my children. I hoped they would understand the sacrifices I was making, but as they grew older, things started to change. One evening, Lily was getting ready for a school dance. I had rushed straight from work, still in my dirty uniform. I tried to stay out of the way, not wanting to embarrass her. But when she saw me, she turned away, pretending not to notice me. It was a small moment, but it felt like a knife in my heart. Max, on the other hand, started to become more demanding. "Mom, all the other kids have the latest video game," he'd say. "Mom, it's not a big deal," he'd insist when I told him we couldn't afford it. Over time, his wants turned into expectations, and those expectations became a sense of entitlement. One day, we were in the driveway of our old rental house. Max asked me for money to buy a new bike. I told him I didn't have it. He laughed and said, "Guess the ATM's out of cash today." Lily just rolled her eyes and walked inside. That night, I lay awake, listening to the ticking of the clock, wondering when my children had stopped seeing me as a person. It was during a particularly difficult time at work that I met an elderly patient named Mildred. She was a feisty old woman with a heart of gold. One day, as I was mopping the floor of her room, she looked at me and said, "Child, you can't keep giving until there's nothing left of you." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I started to think about my life, about all the times I had said yes when I should have said no. I realized that I needed to take control of my own life. That's when I met my friend Rose, a retired nurse. She was 10 years older than me and had a no-nonsense approach to life. One day, in the break room of the nursing home, Rose slid a cup of tea in front of me and said, "You look like you're about to collapse. You need to talk to someone about your finances." I laughed, thinking she meant a therapist, but she shook her head. "No, Pearl. You need a financial advisor." She wrote down the name of a man named David on a napkin. David was someone she trusted with her own retirement. I was hesitant at first. I had never spoken to a financial advisor in my life, and I barely understood my own paycheck. But Rose was insistent, and I decided to give it a try. When I sat in David's office, I felt exposed. I held my folder of papers like a shield, aware of every stain on my uniform. David greeted me with a warm smile and listened patiently as I explained my situation. He didn't judge me, and he gently asked me why my children had so much control over my life. He suggested I create a binder, a detailed record of my accounts, passwords, debts, and my wishes. It was a way to take back control, to remind myself that my life was my own. As the months passed, I followed David's advice. I learned about my credit, my pension, and the possibility of buying the small house I had been renting for years. One day, after reviewing the paperwork for what felt like 100th time, David looked at me and said, "You can do this." It was the first time in a long time that someone had said those words to me without expecting something in return. I didn't tell Lily and Max right away. I wanted to wait until the sale was final, until I felt strong enough to face their questions. But then, Max called me one night. His voice was warm and apologetic, which always meant trouble. He said he needed a small favor, just a credit card in my name to help him out of a tight spot. Without thinking, I agreed. 2 months later, a letter from a debt collection agency arrived. It was for $8,000, with missed payments, late fees, and accrued interest. I was devastated. When I confronted Max, he shrugged it off and said he'd pay me back eventually. That night, I opened the binder David had helped me create. I added the letter from the collection agency, my notes about the phone call, the date, and the time. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't from anger. It was from a newfound clarity. I called David the next morning. He didn't scold me. He just asked me what I wanted to do next. For the first time, I answered honestly. I want to stop being afraid of my own children. As I continued to work on my finances, I met another elderly patient named Ethel. She was a wealthy woman who lived alone. We became close, and I would cook for her and listen to her stories. As her health declined, our conversations became more and more precious. One day, Ethel passed away. At her memorial service, her lawyer pulled me aside and told me that Ethel had left me $200,000. I couldn't believe my ears. I told him there must be a mistake, but he assured me there wasn't. Ethel had written that I was the only person who had made her last years feel meaningful. I took the paperwork to David. He was overjoyed. He showed me how this money could be used as a down payment on a better house, a place where I could live out my days in comfort. With careful planning and a lot of paperwork, I was able to buy a beautiful house worth $800,000. It was a dream come true, but I knew it wouldn't last. One day, Rose took a picture of me standing in front of my new house, laughing. She posted it online in a group for retirees. Lily found the picture first. She was furious. She drove to Max's place, and they started to piece together how I could afford such a house. They convinced themselves that I was being manipulated and that they needed to step in to protect me. That's how they ended up at my door with Mr. Thompson, trying to get me to sign the co-ownership agreement. After I refused to sign, things escalated. They claimed I was mentally unstable and sent a letter requesting mediation. At the mediation, I opened my binder and showed them all the evidence of their financial demands. It was the first time I had spoken the truth without holding back. They didn't like what they saw. A week later, they petitioned the court for a conservatorship evaluation. I was humiliated, but I knew I had to fight. I went through the cognitive assessment, answering every question until my head ached. The doctor found that my memory lapses were normal for my age and that I was fully capable of making my own decisions. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with my binder, ready to face them. The judge's decision was a relief, but it also came with a heavy heart. The investigation that followed uncovered forged signatures on an old loan against my previous house. Max was confronted first, and in his panic, he tried to blame Lily. Their united front crumbled, and charges were filed. Months have passed since then. I've moved into my quiet life. My garden is blooming, and I cook in a kitchen that feels like a safe haven. Sometimes, I still think about Lily and Max. Loving them has cost me so much, but saving myself has made me whole. I've learned that it's never too late to take control of your own life, even when it means standing up to those you love the most.